because the issues are a lot. And I'm sure if we had not even pulled the brakes, we could still be there.
Yes, and people were calling you out on social media for not.
Because everybody needed to speak. And you can imagine, we had close to about 200 media people in the room. And yet we had so much time. So it was quite difficult. And even to restrict everybody to a question was even problematic. Because, I mean, people should have asked follow-up questions and all of that. But I think we'll do a lot more of this. I mean, what yesterday tells us is that the Ghanaian people are interested in having these conversations. And we're going to have a lot more of these even before we get into the elections. Let people ask the questions. And I doubt if in our fourth republic, we've ever had this scenario where the vice president, the sitting vice president, puts himself up and places himself in the presence of so many media people for such a grilling 4 hours of questioning. Yesterday was tough, and I doubt if anybody can even point a single question yesterday that was, oh, this was a favorable question. It was tough. I mean, all the difficult issues, complex, sensitive issues, agitated the minds of the people were asked yesterday, and you could see the demeanor of the flag bearer of the MPP that here I am, let's talk. And that's something that I think we should really applaud. But we are grateful to all the media persons who made it yesterday, and the millions of Ghanaians who were watching us across the country. We assure you we are going to have a lot more of these.
We're looking forward to that. So let's look at some of the key issues that came up yesterday. One of them that has raised controversy afterwards is the gold for oil deal and the revelation the vice president made. Clarify for us some of the things he said. He said, indeed, the government had to go into a deal with a businessman because of the state of our economy. And he says the gold for oil deal is our economic messiah. Expatiate on that for us.
Well, I think that to sum it up, we, just as all other countries, Ghana went through its own economic crisis right after the COVID. And within the period of recovery, we had a lot of turbulence. I mean, there is no hiding that between January 2022 and December 2022 was one of the most difficult periods within the last 8 years in terms of the economy. I mean, we had dollar going all the way to about 17, 18, even 20 cedis at some point as of November 2022. We had inflation rising all the way to about 54% and all of that. So we've seen some difficulties. I mean, all other countries are like trying to recover. And it's quite obvious that once our currency is agitated, it affects every aspect of our economy. And because we are heavily import dependent, it always mounts pressure on us. So what the gold for oil basically did was to introduce some sort of a barter trade to reduce our demand for dollar at some point to be able to reduce the pressure on the dollar. So you realize that in spite of the gold for oil, our currency still suffered a lot of hit. And the point Dr. Bawumia is making is that but for the gold for oil, you can imagine the level of hit. Because even with that, look at how much we felt the turbulence. And so without that, it could even have been worse. I mean, the amount of oil we import every month was running in excess of about $400 million every month. What it means is that every month you need to go and look for some $400 million and take away to go and get crude into the country. And so what the gold for oil does is that instead of looking for the $400 million and taking away, you get your gold in cedis, and then you don't look for dollar. You simply take your gold to go and look for crude and bring into the country. So basically it's a strategy to reduce your need or your demand for oil. And that's why he's made a point that he thinks it's a program that we need to formalize and really intensify. And it's very important that we look at that because it was a midstream strategy that was introduced. And that's why sometimes when I hear some of the commentary from people like Professor Steve Mantia, as a professor.
Yeah,
Steve Mantia,
doctor.
I don't think it's something that we have to really fight so much. This was a strategy that was introduced midstream in the middle of a crisis. Surely there may be areas that we need to really tighten to really formalize it and institutionalize it.
He's more concerned about transparency.
But I think
he says the deal is shrouded in secrecy.
I think he's overstretching it. And I like the fact that he rightly stated the cap he's wearing now. because at this point, I think he's also mixing the cups. And I follow him on social media, I watch his comments. I don't think he's entirely objective on some of the issues that he raises. Because, I mean, we're in the space of RTI. You have a committee, right? Demand for it. There's law. If, for example, if for anything at all, it is true that you don't have access to this information, request for it. You will get it. The BOG and BOST actually produces weekly reports on gold for oil. There's nothing opaque about it. There's nothing, lack of transparency about it. It's there. So sometimes I think people like to create storms in teacups. And for example, even if there's a storm, request for the information. You get it and then you look at it. Why do you always assume wrongdoing because you don't know something? The fact that you have no information on something doesn't mean there is a wrongdoing. So before you conclude on the wrongdoing, be sure that you have all the information. I find it difficult when you tell me that I don't know about this, and yet I think it is this. It is corrupt because I don't know about it. The fact that you don't know about it doesn't mean it's corrupt. You understand? But tell me that I know about it, and that's why I'm sure it's corrupt. Otherwise, it's more like blackmail. I'm calling you corrupt so that you tell me what I want to know. You don't have to call me corrupt to tell me what you want to know. Request for it. We don't have to create chaos in our society at all times. This is information available. BOG, BOST, they are generating reports week on gold for oil. If, for example, you have recommendations to make, which I think it's not out of place. This is a strategy that was introduced in the midst of a crisis. Okay? And the Vice President yesterday said that we need to institutionalize it. And it's a fact that countries...
So what's the direct policy direction if you are going to institutionalize
but that's something that we're going to do. I mean, he said it.
Is it now at the formative stage or it is already part of your manifesto?
I mean, fortunately, it's something that we've been running in the past few months. And so it's quite easy to know the loose ends and tighten it to really institutionalize it. So it's part of our manifesto. And it's a complete value chain. So the Vice President has said that we have the mineral resources. What is left is how we'll be able to safely, appropriately mine it and use it to build our economy. The UK, British pound, is strong because of gold. And yet they don't have gold. It's simply because they've been able to accumulate so much gold over the period. And so what he is saying is that we need to look at the value chain in its whole, holistically. Let's boost the minerals extraction sector. When we boost it, let's have a system where we are buying this not with dollar, buying it with our CD. It means that we are not looking for dollar for anything. And then when we get it, it is only when we have the gold, before gold for oil comes in place. If you don't have gold, you can't go take gold for any oil. So he says, I'll set up the Minerals Development Bank. Currently, when the Ghanaian person has a concession, the lands are ours. But even when we have the concessions, you don't have the money to mine these resources. So typically we'll go abroad, look for foreign investors, and then a Ghanaian partner will take 10% or 5%. And the foreign investor will come and put in his money, mine, and take 80-90% away. It means that we're really getting nothing out of it. So let's get the Ghanaian ownership increased in the mineral exploration sector. Make sure the extraction sector, make sure that even not for anything at all, it's wholly Ghanaian owned, and it's in the manifesto. We want to have a lot more wholly Ghanaian owned concessions. And we are even making the geo data available for the locals so that it discourages them from going into the river bodies to go and mine. At the moment, they are going into the river bodies because, one, it's expensive to mine in the rocks and in the lands. In the river bodies, you mine, you wash it, you get something small, then you go away. And they will do it because they live on it. So tap that energy and redirect it positively by making sure that you give them the data. They know specifically where the mineral is. And then when they identify it, the land is for them. You give them the financial resource, the muscle, to be able to get the needed logistics and expertise to mine, which is the Mineral Development Bank. Then the next level is that once you've identified you have the data, you've identified the location of the land, you know ownership of the land, it is for you, you need licenses. He's giving clear-cut systems to reenact the license regime and simplify it and make it more convenient. And even get a lot more local participation, the traditional authorities, the district assemblies, so that the licensing regime becomes very convenient for the man that's living in somewhere who also has land and there is minerals in it. Once the licensing is sorted out, you go to the Mineral Development Bank, you get the financial support, you mine the gold locally, it is wholly owned, 100% owned by the Ghanaian person, then government will buy with CD. When government buys with CD, it helps to build our gold reserves and backs our currency to strengthen it.
Talking about our currency,
expand.
Yeah,
He makes the point that in that case, we can expand even the barter trading. It may not only be for oil. There may be other things that we could now go, so that all we are trying to do is to reduce our demand, our looking, our search for dollar. And if we have something that we could use to get what we want, because whatever you're going to buy outside the country, you need to go and look for dollar.
Exactly.
To go and buy it.
So that's where the gold for oil deal comes in handy. So let's look at the CD. Another key question that came up last night was a question from Vanessa of Metro TV, where she referred Bawumia to some of the comments he made as far back as 2014. Yeah. He said, if the fundamentals are weak, the exchange rate will expose you. He stood by this comment yesterday.
Yes. Which is just, it's economic facts.
So why is our exchange rate?
Because we are not, because the fundamentals.
Not where it should
because
be.
The fundamentals.
But he says the fundamentals are not weak.
When did he say that? He has never said that. That is why...
Yesterday he admitted. My producers will get that.
Yeah, I'm saying that he has never said that the fundamentals are not weak. He admitted that the fundamentals, when the fundamentals are weak, it will expose you. It was true then, and it is true today. And that is why he's continuously advocating for us to build a very formalized, robust, sustainable, more resilient economy. Because until we build that fundamental, we would never get out of this. And what are the fundamentals? Purchasing gold locally is one of the ways of fixing it. What are the fundamentals? Building our industrial base is one of the ways to fix it. What are the fundamentals? Boosting SMEs so that we produce more and increase our productivity locally is part of the fundamentals. But we are not there yet. And until we get there, we are going to struggle. And that is why if you look at this manifesto, it is in continuing the good things that we have started in the past 8 years in building the fundamental. Formalizing the economy is one of the ways. If you have an economy where you cannot even identify where your people are, it's a weak fundamental. And that is why he spent almost 8 years building a formalized economy which is hinged on digitalization. Today, businesses are connected, homes are connected, neighborhoods are connected. Today, the police are sitting in one room and they are seeing across the country what is happening everywhere. We have increased internet penetration from 32% to over 70%. That is all part of building the fundamentals of the economy. And that is why he can now speak of a credit scoring system, which will ensure that you and I don't need to raise all the money we need before we get the basic things that we require at home. What that means then is that you can now get access to anything you want and pay small. And as you do that, you are increasing the demand. You are buying more from these industries. And what are you asking them to do? You're asking them to produce more. And when you're asking them to produce more, what are you asking them to do? You're asking them to hire more and employ more. And as they employ more, you are reducing the idle hands in the country and you are increasing productivity. So he stood by it. And it's a fundamental economic principle, which is why every single step along the line, he keeps advocating for it. Let's fix our fundamentals. The problem with focusing on the fundamentals is that the more you keep your eye on that, the less it is appreciated because it takes a while for it to bear fruit. And that's where the difficulties come in. And that's why you need a government that is able to take these very bold decisions and bold steps and say, it is tough, it is difficult, but let's stick to it and make sure that we fix it once and for all.
But you had 8 years to fix the fundamentals.
Yes, we're not done.
Should we trust you with 4 more years?
So you are so the question is that, well, I agree, 8 years. You look at what we did within that 8 years and compare to our opponent and what they did in terms of fixing the fundamentals in 8 years and take your decision. We think that in 8 years, we have done more in terms of fixing our economic fundamentals than what our opponent did. And that's why we believe that we are better.
But why should we compare? They didn't promise to fix the fundamentals. You made the promise.
We didn't set
trusted you.
We didn't set the rule that you have to make a choice. You have to make a choice. And so long as you have to make a choice, it's a comparative decision. If you don't have to make a choice, then you don't have to compare. But you definitely have to compare because you have to make a choice. Why? I keep telling you here that why would you go and vote if I'm a teacher? Why would I go and vote for somebody that was president and said that if I work for a year, he will pay me for 3 months and vote against the one that's paying me for 1 year? Is it not comparative analysis? Are you just going to vote for the opponent simply because I said I'll fix the fundamentals, I have started and I'm not done? You will measure. You will surely look at what I have done in fixing the fundamentals vis-a-vis what the opponent has done to take your decision. So as for the comparative analysis, we didn't set it. It's the Constitution. You are going to make a choice. And we think that the former president who had a chance to be president before clearly has a scorecard. Let him show us a scorecard. In fact, he has the biggest responsibility to convince Ghanaians as to why he should be made president again. Because all the things he's telling us he will do are things he told us he would do in 2012, which we made him president. If not for anything at all, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia has never been president. So you've never really seen what he could do in terms of what he's saying he would do. But for the former president, he was president. And everything he said he would do today was in existence then. Did he do it? Why didn't he do it?
Well, last night, Bawumia also made some statements alluding to the fact that if he works on everything right now, what then would he do in his next administration? So is it the case that it's all about power? So
I think that, again, let's give us room to speak in jest. That's not what he said in response to that question.
Okay.
He said that at the beginning and went on to actually give his response. Why are we picking that phrase? I mean, he said that and laughed. When he said, oh, but if I do everything now, what would I have to do? Then he went on to respond, and he said that, you see, at every point in time in the life of every country, like we have in the US, why is Kamala Harris still campaigning? He's the vice president of the United States of America. I don't think there's any thriving democracy than in the US. Why hasn't she done everything that she needs to do as a vice president? Today, are we discussing making secondary education free? We are not. Why? Because it was discussed in 2008. And it has been done now. So today, we are discussing tertiary. Is that the case? So at every point in time in the life of a country, there will be something to be done. You can never finish fixing the country's issues all in 4 years. And that is why even in this manifesto that we have developed, the manifesto is time-bound. So it is not all of Ghana's problems that has been captured in the MPP manifesto or the NDC manifesto. Why haven't we done that? Because it is not possible. If you want to be a lawyer, you cannot just move from class 1 and become a lawyer.
But then the concern now is that the next administration would be decided on the 7th of December.
Yeah.
If you are in office now, can you help fix the problem even if
are we not doing
lose
good for oil today? Is that not one
the
way
elections?
Is that not one way of trying to fix the problem? Didn't we have fuel prices drop in the last 2 windows? Is that not part? Didn't inflation go to 54%? Is it not at 20%? Is it not part of fixing the problem? So what are you talking about? Are we not recruiting nurses and teachers now? Are we not recruiting security people? Is it not part of fixing the problems? Who has stopped fixing the problem?
And that key thing that came up last night.
There is evidence that a lot of things are going on, for which reason we are seeing the economy rebounding. So nobody has stopped.
Another thing that came up last night was the vice president reaffirming his stance when it comes to the anti-LGBTQ bill, where he said that indeed, though there are court issues currently, there will be no ifs or buts. That's his exact quote, that he would append his signature if he is president. Now we're looking at the impact to our international community. How do you plan to fix this should you be elected?
The vice president's position on LGBTQ is quite clear. There's no ambiguity about that. And I don't think there's anything to fix. And I don't think there's any impact. We are a sovereign state. We are a country that has our own rules. We make our rules and laws based on our values. For example, over here in Ghana, you can, in some areas, in some tribes, you can marry more than one wife. Is that the case?
Yeah.
But in the Western, you can't marry more than one wife. Can you?
No.
Exactly. So maybe in some other part in the international community, a man and a man can marry, and a woman can marry. I don't think that we have anything against that. That is based on their values. But in Ghana, 90% to 95% of the citizens do not believe that our values allow a woman and a woman to be married and a man to be married, at least for now, as we live here today. I don't believe in that. You don't probably believe in that. In other communities, our Christian community frowns against it. Our Islamic community frowns against it. Our traditional community frowns against it. There is not a single religion in Ghana that supports that. And I'm yet to see any culture. There's no cultural grouping or tribe or ethnic group that supports it. So I don't think there's any question about it.
Okay.
You may individually disagree with that. But I don't think even our laws that we make on a daily basis, it is everybody in the country that subscribes to the law. But it is what the majority subscribes to. And Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia personally believes that a man and a man, or a woman and a woman, cannot be together in that way. And as president, he is not going to allow that to happen, at least not under his presidency. And he's been quite emphatic about that.
Thank you,
and
Dennis.
I think the international community will respect that.
Thank you, Dennis Miracle Abaogye. Join us here.